peak expectations for peak season, how transportation feels about AI adoption, and the joy of robots. Pull up a chair and join us as the editors of DC Velocity discuss these stories, as well as news and supply chain trends on this week's Logistics Matters podcast. Hi, I'm Dave Maloney. I'm the Group Editorial Director at DC Velocity. Welcome. Logistics Matters is sponsored by ID Label. As you gear up for 2026, make sure your warehouse is ready to perform. From durable rack and pallet labels to cold storage solutions, floor striping, and professional installation, ID Label has you covered. Visit idlabelinc.com to get started or to request your free sample pack today. ID Label. When we do the barcodes, you can do more. As usual, our DC Velocity senior editors Ben Ames and Victoria Kickham will be along to provide their insights into the top stories of this week. But to begin today, while stores are already showing the Christmas spirit with all their beautiful decorations and being crammed with lots of inventory, peak season is not officially kicked off yet, but it will next week with Black Friday. After a tumultuous year for supply chains, are retailers ready to handle the most wonderful time of the year? Here's Victoria with today's guest to find out. Victoria?
Thanks, Dave. Our guest today is Kraig Foreman, President of eCommerce for DHL Supply Chain, and he's here to talk to us about the many pressures retailers and logistics companies are facing this peak season and what we can expect as the holiday shopping season kicks into high gear in the coming week. Welcome, Kraig.
Thanks, Victoria. Great to be here.
Thanks for joining us. So logistics companies are facing some big challenges this peak season, including tariff-related pricing pressures, inflation, the effects of the recently ended government shutdown. I wanted to start just by asking, what are your greatest concerns heading into the holiday peak?
With the timing of this conversation, I will say we're a week out from Thanksgiving and Cyber Weekend and Cyber Week coming up very quickly. The great news is my concerns are reducing by the day. I think if you would have asked me this question 4 months ago or 5 months ago, I would have had a great deal of concern around brands and retailers' ability to get their inventory right, figuring out how they were going to sell, what price points they were going to sell at, what their promo strategies were going to be. But all that has really settled down. Retailers and brands have taken different courses throughout this year with all of the disruptions, but have all seemed to have settled into a good place and are ready to go for this peak season, which is exciting because I think we were nervous coming into it, but we're really gaining confidence every day right now.
Well, that's good news. In addition to the pressures I just listed, staffing constraints are also an issue. I wondered, if you can address that as well as the other issues and describe how your company is dealing with all of these pressures to ensure as seamless a peak as possible for customers.
Yeah, staffing is very important for us. People is the most important element or asset to our success in our business. And so making sure that we have the people resources that are in place and trained and capable and confident to execute what we need to execute for our customers is one of our largest focuses in our peak season planning, which we've started peak season planning in January to make sure that we've got those resources and tools and plans well established for this time of year, which really gives us confidence at this point in time. And there are labor battles that are happening in the industry still. It's just this time of year. It's an inherent part of it. Everybody is trying to win the talent war. But I will tell you this year, or even last year a little bit, but this year in particular, that labor battle is not as intense as it has been in past years. There is some labor availability that is in the market. Obviously, we're all still trying to go out and get the best talent for our needs and seem to be having great success with that this year. But I think it's a lot of that is to do with the culture that you establish in your business and the tools that you provide people to do the work. So things like having robotics and solid systems in place are things that people get up to speed faster, and they're comfortable doing that type of work with those types of that type of equipment and tools. And you become a preferred place for people to come for their seasonal work needs. And that helps a lot year over year is really making sure you've got that safe environment with people that they know they can operate with confidence. And so that's kind of our key to winning in that labor battle that happens every peak.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you about robotics in a minute. You touched on inventory earlier. So I wanted to ask about consumers sort of being urged to buy early this season. And that really seems to be part of a recent trend, at least in my mind, toward this extension of the holiday peak. It seems to start earlier and later. How does that affect your business, especially given the inventory balancing acts that retailers have had to deal with this year? I know you said you've gotten through much of that, but I wonder if you can kind of just touch on how that affects the business overall.
Yeah, it's been an ongoing trend every year, trying to win the day with the consumer as early as possible, provides more flexibility for the retailer or brand as the season goes on to adjust their promos accordingly, ultimately trying to achieve the highest margin yield they can. So by going earlier, it is helping them understand, some consumer behaviors, what they're liking, what they're not liking, and gives them a longer time to make some adjustments. Really, consumers are adopting to their earlier buying to a point, but you'll still see that Black Friday and Cyber Monday are the big days to buy. That still exists. I think what's happening by going a little earlier with sales, it's just taking some of the extreme peak off of that weekend. It's leveling it a little bit, but it's still a fairly extreme peak that takes place. And consumer behavior from what we've experienced and seen, and feedback we've had through different surveys, is there isn't a full trust out there that the deal that is up there early is the biggest deal that's going to be offered on the item. There's still a perception out there that Cyber Monday or Black Friday is going to be the epic deal, and what's happening right now is just a good deal. And so a lot of people do still wait. But I think what we'll find over time, more and more people are going to see when we list a Black Friday deal in the middle of November, that on Black Friday, it's still the same deal. And so that will give people more confidence over time to start doing things earlier.
Interesting. What changes, if any, have you made in order to accommodate, sort of customers' need for greater flexibility and agility in the environment that we're talking about right now?
Yeah, that's a huge trend, and a lot of that is as an industry, we've really become much more agile in supply chain disruptions, ever since the pandemic, and now dealing with, volatile tariff situations and de minimis changes. And we understand that supply chain disruption is real, and as an industry, we have to be able to get the pulse back into the supply chain rhythm quicker than we traditionally have. And I think the industry is doing a great job with that, and being ready for peak season like we are this year is a huge part of that. But that also means that in order to create that ability to react quickly to disruptions, you have to have that flexibility and agility. And we're seeing that come through in a couple of different things. One is very simply in the solutions in fulfillment centers, warehouse operations that are going in. The robotics element is a big element to creating flexibility. We're no longer bolting things down, conveyors, sorters, things like that. We are bringing in robotics, and when the volume goes up, we just add more robotics. And when volume goes down, we can remove the robotics and move them somewhere else. It just creates a lot more agility in our operations and ability to flex with volumes and profiles. And it also allows our workforce to and our teams to learn faster and be a part of capable execution much quicker. But one of the other things that we are doing and have done this year is we just recently did an acquisition of a company called IDS, which is really an e-commerce focused multi-customer fulfillment organization that has sites across the US. And we're bringing in some new technology to that business to really build an e-commerce network and ecosystem for customers that allows them to be in multiple nodes, flex in and out of those nodes based on what's happening in those markets, and just create a more flexible commercial solution for them. And we're really seeing a huge interest and take on driving into more of those infrastructure concepts than into building big, dedicated, complex solutions that kind of lock them in. And so we're really pushing and investing heavily into that strategy, which I think just is an exact example of the type of flexibility and agility that retailers and brands need.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thanks for elaborating, excuse me, on the robotics piece, because that's what I was going to ask you about, and you answered it without me having to do so. What other potential hurdles are you preparing for? I'm just wondering if there's, sort of anything on the horizon that you think our listeners should pay close attention to as peak season unfolds. I guess it's kind of a crystal ball question.
Yeah, it's the same every year. It's what I call the big three watch outs. Panic promos is one of my favorites. Sales aren't going well for a brand or a retailer that they thought were going to happen, and you get close to the end of season and you do some dramatic promos coming close to shipping cutoff, and therefore you've got a great deal of adjustments in your supply chain to try and make to execute the impacts of that panic promo. Profile changes, customers, consumers ordering differently than we expected them to, can really impact a lot of things in cost and in execution across peak season. But the one wild card, again, control what you can control. We can't control the weather, and there's always that looming concern, and we've had it in years past of big winter storm coming through in during peak season, which one prevents people from either getting to work or even from parcel carriers being able to navigate through for deliveries. It just creates a buildup, and depending on the size of the impact of that, that's always a challenge or concern or worry. But those are the three things that we look for and are always watching for, and this year really isn't any different.
Terrific. Kraig, thanks very much for joining us today. I appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation.
Great. Nice to meet you, Victoria. Thanks
Yeah.
for the time.
Thank you. We have been talking with Kraig Foreman of DHL Supply Chain. Back to you, Dave.
Thank you, Kraig and Victoria. Now let's take a look at some of the other supply chain news from the week. And we can hardly report on any story without a mention of artificial intelligence and its impacts on supply chains. And Ben, you wrote this week about one supply chain sector that appears ahead of the curve.
Yeah, that's true, Dave. The transportation sector we're talking about today, it has not traditionally been known as an early adopter, we could say, of new technologies. Just for examples, pick any buzzword from the last couple years in the tech area, like blockchain or cloud computing or Internet of Things. And probably you saw other business sectors like maybe finance or retail or healthcare using those things before trucking fleets did. But this week we saw a study saying that it might be different this time with artificial intelligence. While many industries are struggling to realize value and return on investment from AI, transportation actually appears to be a little ahead of the curve, according to Breakthrough. That firm is a Wisconsin-based company that provides transportation and supply chain solutions for shippers. And Breakthrough came to that conclusion from their peak shipping season pulse survey of about 300 industry executives. And they found that nearly half, 49%, of U.S. transportation leaders, managers, say that artificial intelligence actually reshaped how they managed this year's fourth quarter peak season transportation rush.
Well, Ben, certainly the trucking industry that we covered today has evolved to use technology in many parts of the business where it never had before.
Yeah, I mean, you can just off the top of our heads, there are ELDs, of course, for the logging devices, and there's AI in the dash cams, and there's just a lot, and security, a lot of technology that wasn't there before. But the Breakthrough study found with artificial intelligence specifically that transportation companies said that they'd used AI in the following specific ways: to anticipate shifting freight demand was one of the top ones, and to manage rising transportation and fuel costs. And other teams at the same company were using AI for some different stuff in planning, operations, and decision making, most often more specifically for analytics and reporting, for route and load optimization, and for freight forecasting. So those are some of the specific applications of AI in transportation, which I found pretty interesting because there's so much coverage, as you said at the top, but AI is such an incredibly broad technology that so far it's been tough to nail down exactly how people want to use it. At the same time, Breakthrough also said that there's plenty of room ahead for growth. While most transportation teams are using AI for core planning and forecasting tasks, just 1 in 3 have extended the use of AI into things like rate negotiation or contract management. So, according to this study, in the near future, transportation and shippers will continue to explore how technology can streamline their costs, improve carrier relationships, and create better network efficiencies. Just to close up, Heather Muller, who's Chief Client Strategy Officer at Breakthrough, said, it's a real-time advantage helping shippers to manage costs, build resilience, and keep goods moving during the busiest time of the year.
That's right. And it seems like those are some good practical applications for AI that are beyond the hype that we hear about all the time, and they're offering some solid benefits.
Yeah, it's good to put a little meat on the bones of this thing because the hype gets a little breathless otherwise.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Ben.
Glad to.
And Victoria, you wrote this week about warehouse robotics and how their benefits go well beyond just lightening the physical load.
That's right, Dave. Yeah, so this story is about workers' attitudes and perspectives on robots in the warehouse. It's based on a report that came out earlier this month showing that warehouse workers are actually embracing robotics. And this piqued my interest because we often hear the opposite, that workers fear robots in the workplace, worrying that it means job loss, that the robots, will replace them. Well, according to a survey of more than 400 U.S. warehouse associates, most view robotics and automation as a benefit to both their careers and their livelihoods. The survey was conducted by global warehouse robotics provider Exotech and is detailed, in the company's recent Warehouse Workers Sentiment Report, Understanding the Impact of Automation on Retention and Satisfaction. Company leaders said the survey reveals, and I'm quoting, a surprisingly strong embrace of robotics on the warehouse floor, with the majority of respondents saying they are interested in working with robots. 7 out of 10 workers said they are open to or interested in working alongside automation, for example. And nearly 3 times as many workers said they are attracted to working in a warehouse that has automation as opposed to being put off by that.
Well, that is good news, given the growing use of robots in warehouses across the country. Did the report say why those is driving those kinds of sentiments?
Yes, productivity, safety improvements, and really just a general interest in working alongside advanced technology are some of the motivating factors here. But one of the biggest drivers is compensation. The survey found that nearly half of workers, 49%, said that they've earned pay increases thanks to warehouse automation, and 40% agree that working with automation increases the likelihood of getting a raise or promotion. I asked Exotech about the details behind those statistics, and they said that although they didn't explore the specifics of what led to those pay raises in the survey, they said the results echo what they're seeing in the field. Arthur Bellamy, who's Exotech's chief revenue officer, explained it this way, and I'm quoting, he said, automation often brings greater visibility into individual performance, and many operators respond by tying bonuses or raises to productivity targets, especially in picking. Now, we've written much about that. Often companies that implement picking technologies will use gamification strategies to motivate workers, often with bonus for meeting targets. So that makes a ton of sense to me. Bellamy also said that at the same time, automation frees workers from the most repetitive tasks, allowing them to build more valuable skills and take on more strategic responsibilities, changes that naturally support higher pay and advancement. So again, I just thought this was an interesting look at warehouse robotics from those who are actually working alongside them.
Yeah, it certainly is interesting, and I guess more reason to consider automation to help solve a lot of those distribution pain points.
Yeah, and as the cost of technology comes down, I think you start to see it in more and more places.
Right? Lots of benefits there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Victoria.
You're welcome.
We encourage listeners to go to dcvelocity.com for more on these and other supply chain stories. Also, check out the podcast notes section for some direct links to read more about the topics that we discussed today. And we'd like to thank Kraig Foreman of DHL Supply Chain for being our guest. We welcome your comments on this topic and our other stories. You can email us at podcast@agilebme.com. We also encourage you to subscribe to Logistics Matters at your favorite podcast platform. Our new episodes are uploaded on Fridays. And a reminder, Logistics Matters is sponsored by ID Label. The countdown to 2026 is on. If you've got a new warehouse, WMS conversion, or reconfiguration coming up in the new year, lock in your labeling partner now. ID Label manufactures and installs durable warehouse labels and signs. Request your free sample pack today at idlabelinc.com. ID Label. When we do the barcodes, you can do more. We're taking next Friday off from Logistics Matters to spend time with our families and digest from eating way too much turkey and maybe pick up a few Black Friday bargains. So join us again in 2 weeks for the next edition of Logistics Matters. Until then, have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday.